Hi and welcome. My name is Kurt Palmer and I'm your host of Healthcare Leaders in Simsbury. If you haven't been with us before, we've talked about the fact that for a relatively small town, Simsbury has a tremendous amount of assets. So whether it's our schools, our beautiful neighborhoods, places to dine and shop, our open lands, Simsbury really has a lot to offer. This program, however, focuses really on the people assets of Simsbury. And in particular, we're looking at and introducing you and having you get to know people who have been leaders in the healthcare, insurance, and employee benefits business. And as part of that, today I'm very pleased to have with us my guest, Peter VanLoon. Peter has a long and deep background in healthcare and insurance. He's a graduate of Trinity College, also of the Wharton School of Business. He has served in active duty and as a reservist in the Navy, honorably discharged in 2010. And he has held leadership and significant positions in insurance companies like Cigna and Aetna. He's also been a consultant with electronic data systems. And most recently, Peter has held leadership positions in the AccessHealth CT, which is Connecticut's public exchange, which is a vehicle for purchasing insurance. Peter's been both the Chief Operating Officer and currently holds the position of Executive Director of the Exchange Solutions, which is part of AccessHealth CT. So, Peter, it's great to have you, and I really appreciate you being on the program.
Thanks, Kurt.
I'd like to ask the first question of my guests. How did you happen to come to live in Simsbury? And maybe you can talk about your experiences being in town since you've lived here.
Well, I got here in 1987. I followed my wife here from Reno, Nevada. She had gotten a job at Cigna, and I quit my job in Nevada and came here to marry her. We thought we'd be in here for only a couple years, but it's been 29 going on 30. Since I've been in town, of course I've been working, had the good fortune to do some interesting stuff. I was one of the first guys involved with getting the girls lacrosse program up and running. Scariest thing I've ever done is coach girls lacrosse, middle school girls, for a couple of years. I've been involved as an assistant scoutmaster at Troop 175 in the Boy Scouts at St. Mary's. And the other thing from a community service standpoint, while I was in the reserves, I was the Navy's and Department of Defense's representative to the state of Connecticut, and then to FEMA Region 2 in New York for emergency management. So I represented what the Navy and the Department of Defense could do in support of the civilian government for emergency management, especially after 9/11.
That's a lot of good work, a lot of public service across the board. In terms of AccessHealth CT, this exchange is created by the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Tell us a little bit about what AccessHealth CT or what exchanges are generally, and then maybe specifically some things about what's going on here in the state.
You're right, as a creature of the Affordable Care Act, or ACA, the law prescribed the opportunity for states to either develop their own exchange or defer to the federal government. We in Connecticut decided to build our own exchange. Exchanges, as we've built them, it's been basically a shop and compare for insurance. But it's more than that, because there's various subsidies that are available for buying insurance on the exchange. And so a lot of what we had to develop was the technology and the process to do the eligibility determination for people for subsidies. And as it turned out, we ended up building one that would first decide whether you're eligible for Medicaid. And if you're eligible for Medicaid, we'd send you to the Medicaid system. If you're eligible for buying insurance under a subsidy, you'd come to us. And we'd lead you through the shop, compare, and then purchase. Exchanges have been a force over the last couple years. I think mostly to do with the fact that healthcare and health insurance is going more and more to the individual and putting the individual in charge of their purchase of insurance, but also their use of the healthcare system. And we as a public, we deal mostly with individuals. But in the private side, what I can see is you may still be getting your health insurance through your employer, but you're interacting with the system as an individual through an exchange. And I think they're here to stay, because I think that as we move forward, insurance is going to become more and more what individuals have to be concerned with, their purchase and management, and less what their companies buy for them.
So we hear the term consumerism in healthcare, or the consumerization of healthcare. Is that really what you're referring to, and is there more to it than what you've described so far?
A couple years ago, I did a startup in consumer-directed health. We had a technology that could reach into claim systems and into banking systems and set up accounts in the middle. And it was great technology. It's still around in actually some large companies' technology, but we were what we called ourselves a consumer-directed health startup. But it was putting the customer at the center of insurance and how they interact with the healthcare system. And quite honestly, technologically, it was easy to put the consumer in the middle. I shouldn't say easy. It was intricate. But the hard part was getting the consumer, and has been for us on the exchange, continuing to educate the consumer as to how to purchase insurance, what they should be looking for, and then once they've purchased it, how do they use it? So consumerism to me is the service of the individual in the healthcare purchase and management on an individual basis. And I think it is the future.
Well, it's really one of the few things that we have that is a major purchase. And let's face it, the cost of healthcare is significant. I mean, the premiums for insurance alone are significant. But it's one of the few things that if you work for an employer, you don't purchase as an individual. Someone else is really making that purchase for you and either contributing to your premium or not, as the case may be. But your employer doesn't pay your mortgage or contribute to your mortgage or your car or other big purchases. So this is a little different.
Yeah, we're seeing, we deal mostly with individuals come to us, either people that don't get insurance through their employer. They choose to buy it on their own. But what we're finding is, no matter who we get, there's an opportunity, a need, a requirement for us to reach out and to do a little bit more than just offer them the opportunity and the method, the way to purchase. We found that our customers demand much more in terms of education, how the financial aspect of insurance works, how they need to put that into their individual budgets, and then how the healthcare system works in general. Because, as you're correct, historically, the company you work for would buy the insurance, and you'd kind of take what you got and figure it out from there. Now people are in a position of saying, gee, I have to make that decision. I have to figure out if the benefit plan suits my particular needs. I need to figure out if I can afford the trade-off, let's say, between a higher premium or a higher deductible and a lower premium. Yeah, a lot of things that people are now dealing with that they haven't had to in the past. And we're finding in the exchange, from people that have never bought insurance to those that live in some of the wealthier parts of the state that are now buying it on their own, they're all clamoring for education about how to be better consumers and more informed on the decisions that they make.
It's the classic challenge and opportunity, and I'm sure there's plenty of both.
There is. Fortunately, we've got great broker support. A lot of the brokers out there initially were a bit skeptical of the law, but we have and will continue to not just leverage but depend upon the brokers, because they're the experts as far as what an individual needs or does not need. And they're the experts. We can't supplant them, nor would we ever want to, because we need their independent experience consulting to the individual for us to be successful. But it is a challenge because a lot of people have never had to get as involved in their health care as they are now with this new era of consumerism.
So I think it's safe to say that this really is an era of transition where people are learning, doing things for the first time, but going forward as they become more familiar, as they've done it once or twice and have a better understanding for what the options are, how much things cost, what sort of subsidies there are, how the benefit package, as you said, fits their family needs or individual needs, as the case may be, then maybe it gets easier. And
well, what we saw is our first year when I was the COO, we'd get a lot of calls from people asking what we might perceive as basic questions, but they're not basic, and we're getting calls from people that have had insurance for their whole working lives, but now that they're buying it for themselves, they're looking at the details. They're calling us up our first year. How does a deductible work against a out-of-pocket maximum? Things that I have to say, as an old underwriter, I would kind of take for granted. But I realized that I needed to step back to get to where my customers were. But that was 3 years ago. Now they're coming back to say, all right, I have this particular circumstance going on in the health of my family. I have X amount in the bank, so I probably could afford a deductible of Y percent. And I'm trying to figure out what the best plan for me is between company X and company B, silver or gold. So help me with that. And oh, by the way, I need to figure this into my rent and the car that I just purchased. And we're really kind of impressed that people call us with some of these questions. We look at the future as helping them with this totality of their financial decision making. But it's not something that 3 years ago I would have imagined. But our customers are very smart, and they're getting smarter, and they're demanding that we serve them with better and more information.
so the existence of the exchanges means that there's a new element in the insurance and healthcare world. And I talked about your background at the outset. I didn't have enough time to go through all of the individual things that you've done and leadership positions that you've held. But how has what you've done, either in your days working for the insurance company or as a consultant or in technology, how have those positions informed your work at AccessHealth CT?
First and foremost, recognize that this being new, nobody's an expert. And I've been involved in a couple new things over time. I consulted about 15 years ago when there's this thing called the internet getting started. And it wasn't like there's a lot of people knew what that was about. So what's informed me is, in this job, humility is definitely required. And the fact that there's nobody that's done this before. But I've learned over time to ask my customers what they think and what they expect, and to listen to what they say before I go off thinking that I can come up with a brilliant way of doing business without their input. And time again, I can't tell you how many times I've run into situations where I've been informed and educated by our customers. So I'd like to think that my experience to date has made me realize that I'm not so smart that I know everything, and that one of the reasons of being smart is to understand what it is you don't know and then ask your customers for what that is. So I've been doing a lot of that. The other aspect is the concept that technology and people need to be integrated. And technology is never an answer in and of itself. It's a way to support what you decide to do with your people and process. And I think that's one of the reasons why we in Connecticut were more successful than other states, is we recognized that technology was just one part of a tripod, the other two being the people that we engage with and our staff, and the third part being the processes that we put in together with all the people that are related. And we built that tripod as opposed to just one stick, and it got us up and running. And we certainly have plenty of stuff to improve upon, but we've at least been able to be open for business since day one.
I was going to bring that up, actually, the idea that you really have served almost as a model for other states who have had, frankly, some difficulty in getting either up and running or maintaining their ability to deliver on the promise of having people purchase insurance and knowing what they're getting, and literally having just the basic information that they need to make those decisions and to effect that purchase. So it's, I think, a testament to the work that you and others have done that Connecticut is held up as a model, and I imagine that that's been sort of a side job to help these other exchanges with the benefit of your knowledge and experience.
Well, actually, that's, as the Executive Director of Exchange Solutions, I was set up to make that happen. Yeah, we got up and running. We got a lot of accolades compared to other states and certainly the feds, but we recognized from day one what we needed to do to improve. And we've always held ourselves to an absolute standard as opposed to a relative one. Mm-hmm. And when we went up, and one of the reasons we got up and running when we did is we took about 20% of all of the requirements from the law and deferred them, because we recognized that if we try to do it all in this 10-month period, we're not going to get it done. So we deferred those and consciously set them aside. They weren't customer facing, it was more back office, information management.
Reporting, things like that.
Reporting, yeah. Things like this. And did cause some consternation with the feds, because they were used to people saying they're going to do everything. And we were, I think, the only state that went back to them and said, we're not going to do everything, we're going to do 80%. They didn't really like that when we told them, but the wisdom of doing that after the debacle that the feds had and several other states had when they first went live showed that we did the right thing. But again, well, all that allowed us to do is to start working on improving our system and our processes from the get-go. Never did we think that we had something that didn't need to improve, and we're continuing to improve it right now.
So I thought it might be useful to clarify one point, and I'm not sure the folks in our audience will be aware of the difference. The exchange is, as it would suggest, a place for people to purchase insurance, but the insurance is being purchased from standard old line companies, traditional, the Cignas, Aetnas, Anthems, and those of the world. So you're really just a marketplace, and I don't mean to diminish your role, but you're not actually the ones taking on the risk. You're really the ones that are being the shop front, if you will, for those companies to be offered and their products to be chosen by the individuals that come to the exchange, right?
Yeah, well, we weren't looking to supplant the private sector. Quite the opposite. We're looking to engage it. That was something that we had to keep repeating in our first year before we went live. There were a lot of preconceptions about what the ACA was and was not going to be. But fortunately, we've had, in our state, have a very active advocate community, people that are advocate for the consumers, and a very supportive insurance community. And if we were successful, it was because we all worked together. And Maryland was a state that didn't do well, and I'm not talking out of school, because they came to us after their first year and we gave them our technology so that they could have technology that worked. And they've put it to great use, and they're up to speed right now. So my point there is that there's been a lot that we've all learned, and I think that we're only getting started.
It seems as though technology is playing a much more important role in healthcare, both in the delivery of clinical care as well as insurance and the administration of it, and obviously the purchase. Your background involves a lot of positions where technology was in play, and you were either chief information officer or, again, dealt with technology. What are some of the game-changing kinds of technologies that are either in use now or figure to be in use in whatever the next several years?
A lot of the stuff might be perceived as mundane. For instance, the first thing is mobile applications. We found that when we first went live, there was a certain cadre of folks that said that people will never be able to do this online. It'll just be too difficult. They're either not going to be able to, they don't have the means to access the internet, they don't know where to go. We found that to be totally incorrect.
When you say do this, meaning actually get on and shop for their plans and actually make the purchase of insurance?
Well, it's even more than that. As I said, we were an integrated eligibility system. You come to us, and we would determine your eligibility for Medicaid, or excuse me, AccessHealth would, not me per se, but we do that online. And we got a lot of feedback from a lot of folks saying, oh, it's paper-based now, it's going to continue to be paper-based. And we've learned, and it's shown, that people are very savvy, technically, and that if you don't honor their savviness with technology, you're limiting yourself. So, okay, it's not necessarily new technology, but there's been a lot of people have avoided embracing it. I think that we've learned and shown that you have to honor the intelligence of the customers that you serve and their abilities, and it's worked well for us. We have what had historically been 100% paper, the Medicaid. We've gotten it to, I think, around 5% now, and looking to narrow that down. So just some of the uses of the basic core technologies of mobile apps and things like this, because a lot of people do use those little devices to do all their work. I think that one of the things that's going to be exceptionally enlightening will be the transparency of individual transaction costs. And forgive me for talking like the underwriter and finance guy that I am, but the idea of part of our exchange is doing something called the All Payers Claim Database. It's another part of the ACA. It's getting data of paid claims from all payers and putting them in one place. And as we do that, you can see that there's disparities in what's being paid for similar healthcare services. And I think the technology is going to catalyze a consumer engagement to a much greater degree. And I think what's going to happen is the consumers are going to be much more savvy and demanding of both the insurance companies and the providers themselves, docs, hospitals, as to why does a colonoscopy cost X at Yale, but X minus Y at Manchester Memorial. And so they're going to have that data, and they're also going to have more and more quality issues too. So I think that's real positive. It informs the consumer. We've seen over time that with an informed consumer, prices go down and quality goes up. I think that's what's going to be happening. I think the change in the healthcare system will continue to accelerate as a result.
It's almost as if there's a convergence, right? The information available to consumers, the need for that information to be put to use in making a purchase because healthcare is, again, unfortunately, one of the last industries where you can buy something or you can have a service delivered and not know what it costs ahead of time. It's very unusual in all other walks of life that would be the case.
Well, now, because a lot of deductibles are high and people are getting savvy, they realize this isn't something that somebody else pays for, either my company or the insurance company. This is something that I pay for. And as they get invested in more first dollars of coverage, they're asking those hard questions. Mm-hmm. And they're demanding of us to give them that impartial information. And we'll be rolling out the all-payer claims database here in the next couple months. It's been a lot longer than we expected, but I think that's going to be a great asset for the consumers.
It'll be great information for people to use. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and I just thought I'd give you a chance to talk about what's ahead for the exchange. Now, I know we've got a lot of political influence as far as the exchange goes, but notwithstanding what happens in November, where do you see the exchanges going over the next several years?
We have to get better and better at what we do, and that is to shop and compare. We're expanding our efforts of educating our customer based on the demand of the customer. It's not enough, as I said earlier, to just to say this is the deductible and this is co-insurance and this is your out-of-pocket maximum. They want to know how that all articulates with their individual situation. Mm-hmm. And what we look to do is to engage folks across that continuum with the idea of offering other different services and coverages on our exchange. We look also, and it's part of our charter, when the state originally stood us up, was to lower health disparities. In other words, improve equity of healthcare delivery, make transparent and hopefully improve costs mm-hmm. and quality of healthcare, and overall improve the health of the state of Connecticut. And that's so we have to keep what we're doing and do it better, the basic transactions and customer service and being a marketplace, but we're expanding into what can we do to collaborate with those folks that have been involved in working to lower health disparities, ensuring that everybody in the state gets health care, not just insurance, and that they know how to use it. So that's where we're going to be spending a lot of our time and energy. But I'd like to stress, we've been successful to date because of the collaborations we've made with the community and the private sector and the public sector. As we go forward, we're going to continue to do that because we can't just by ourselves serve the people of the state. We need to continue to work with the advocates, the community health networks, the other state agencies, and particularly the carriers. It's been a good collaboration. I dare say that's one of the things that I don't think is quite as well known. Everybody knows that Connecticut Exchange was up and running, but I think that we actually have a better collaboration between all the partners than other states. It's been difficult in the fact that everybody's busy, but we've recognized that the best way to serve all of our customers is to work together.
Well, you've done great work, and I think the name AccessHealth CT is appropriately given. I can't thank you enough, Peter. Your comments are very informative, and to our audience, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed Peter's comments and his information, and we look forward to having you join us again on the next Healthcare Leaders in Simsbury. Thanks again.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.